We're ready for our third presentation. Before we do that tonight, I'd just like to recognize a few things tonight. Number one, Steve Collins helped set up the venue tonight. Did a bunch of other stuff too. He's been a real big help, so I really appreciate that. And coordinating the discount on the venue, which, thanks for Roseville Community Education for giving us a discount on that. So we have this beautiful facility as our new home. Hopefully in the next 3-4 months here, we should have a date ready for you for next year here.
Can you pronounce the name of the place?
I can't pronounce the name of the place, but it's Aŋpétu Téča Community Center.
Very good.
And I butchered that greatly, so I hope you appreciate it. So this last portion here is going to be run by Pete Boulay again, because he's our star tonight for 3 presentations in a row.
Hey!
And this is in light of Michelle not being able to be here tonight because of federal mandates. So
I'm not going to say anything. We can't
Alright.
dump if this access.
did I miss anything? All right,
All right, one more.
I'm passing the baton.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for having me here again. Long time no see. Right? Sorry Michelle couldn't be here. Oh, question right at the gate.
Can I ask you just one question?
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe this is just my recency bias,
Okay.
but in terms of like the last 10 to 12 years, is there a tendency for like our winters of snow cover to start a little bit later, but
Yes.
also extend later in the
Yes.
spring? Because,
Yes.
25 years ago, I don't recall as frequently where we didn't have snow cover until, let's say mid-December.
Yes.
It was more like mid-November.
Yes.
But I also don't recall getting much snow on the ground after the end of March.
Yes, and looking at average, we do normals every 10 years. So current normals in 1991 through 2020. So looking at average snow, it's been going down in November, going down in December. January's kind of, February's gone way up. April's gone way up. So yes, you're right. Your perception is perfect. Is that it seems the winter's been shifting later. And it's unfortunate that in a way, because people love winter early on, don't they? They want a white Christmas. They want to play in the snow in December. Once you get about March 15th, and you get that snowstorm, or the thunder blizzard in 2018 around Easter, I think we're kind of done with the winter. So it's unfortunate. That seems to be what's going on, though. You're right. It's shifting later. Now, was it ever that way? Have anybody ever heard of the tournament snowstorm? Right?
Yeah.
Yes, but it's kind of a myth because you have a better chance of having 50 degrees by far, maybe 3 times as likely than having a snowstorm during a tournament. When they say tournament snowstorm, they're really talking about which sport, by the way? Who could tell me? There was no such thing as wrestling tournament. There's no such thing as really, the hockey tournament was brand new. It was basketball. That used to be the king tournament in the early 1900s. So it was the basketball tournament then. But now there's tournaments for a month, right? So you can have, any snowstorm. Yeah. So yeah, you're right about that. And March in recent years has not been a great month for snow. February has, April has, and even May, if you look at Wisconsin, there's been some high flyers. 2013, I think, had the big snowstorm in Wisconsin. Am I thinking that right? Yeah, May. So we had just a little bit here, but not much. And you know what? September snow, where'd those go? We just don't get September snows like we used to. I remember one of them in 1985, I think, in September. That was a good snow. So yeah, it can snow in September. Okay, is Dennis Felkin still on?
He left.
Oh!
I sent him a message.
All right.
I don't know if he thought we were done.
I would love to say hi. Who remembers Dennis Felkin? What channel was he on? He was on a couple. 5. That's it. Yes.
11.
Yes. And 11, right?
Yeah.
Remember the video? Remember the commercial of him going to channel 11? He got in an elevator at channel 5 with a box full of weather smiths and went up to 11 in an elevator. That was pretty good. So yeah, yes, we all watched TV weather back then like crazy. So flipping the channels, right? Going from 4 to 11 to 5, and of course what? Channel 9, right? No, I was on Channel 9, so that's how I know that. So, all right, time for one more talk. This is the MnGAGE Volunteer Precipitation Network. Filling in for Michelle, and I'll talk about CoCoRaHS too. Who's a CoCoRaHS reader? All right. Wow, this is like CoCoRaHS side, non-CoCoRaHS side. Did you guys plan this or what?
Yeah, they don't want us in the city.
No, who? No, that's not true. That is not true.
They don't want us as much.
You know what? This is why I'm giving the MnGAGE talk. I say everybody should be a reader. Absolutely. As Frank's dad would attest, he went door to door in Ramsey County and got as many readers as he possibly could. There's 175 readers in Ramsey County at one time. And it's been the densest network we ever had. And it was great. They were dedicated observers. There's still some of them from that era that are still reporting in Ramsey County today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about CoCoRaHS and Volunteer Precipitation Network. This is a picture of the weather station at the U of M, St. Paul campus. I go there every day. And some days are nice, like today, and some days aren't so nice. The lock froze for a day or two. I couldn't even get in there. So, you know, there's some hazards out there. Saw a coyote out there once. That was kind of interesting. There was even a loose pig once out there. So, yes. How do you call? If you ever see a pig loose, how do you get them to follow you? You're a piggy. It works. I found out. You're a piggy. And they're big too. They're big. Anyway. Let's look at what's going on with MnGAGE. So that's our weather station there. Okay, but yeah, this should have been in my first slide, right? Well, here's about me. Started watching weather at age 9. Went to St. Cloud State University. I feel like this should be the last slide, maybe, because everything seems to be backwards. So I got a degree in meteorology, and for extra torture, I also got a degree in broadcasting, and none of the classes overlap, by the way. So I was in the school so long, when I went to register, I got in trouble. They said I had too many credits. I had to go register in person and go to the registrar. They didn't believe me. I said, no, really, I have that many credits. They go, oh, okay. So anyway, I wound up getting a job at Weather Incorporated, which were housed at Channel 9. And back then, I worked the 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift on Saturdays and Sundays. So what happened is there was no other station that had any Mets on at 3 in the morning back then. There wasn't that morning news or anything back then. And one night, we have a red phone. We used to have red phones. And the red phone is directly connected to the weather service. So you're sitting in there dead at night. When that red phone goes off, you jump as high as you get out of the seat. So I pick up the red phone. And when they did that, they rang all the red phones. Every station had one. So all 4 stations, the phone would ring, you pick it up. Channel 5 had 2 phones, by the way. But Channel 9, we had the red phone. Answer it. This is the weather service. What do you have on your radar? Like, radar? What do you mean? It was like 1995, it was a really busy summer, lots of storms. And I said, radar, why do you want to know it? They said, our radar's down, and we're wondering, you're the only one that picked up from the TV stations. And I said, we're the only station without a radar. Couldn't help them. Our big moment to help the weather service. Nope. So anyway, I eventually got a job at the DNR, been there 26 years, and I'm still watching the weather. Here's my weather log when I was 9 years old. And still doing it. All right. Well, there. This is not moving. Oh, it finally froze on me, huh?
No, I probably just need to reselect over here.
Okay.
Or, is your battery dead?
Oh, there we go.
There.
Okay, so this is a little bit of information on MnGAGE, a little bit of history, what makes a successful network, uses of your precipitation data, what's going on right now, what does the future hold? I hope I didn't put in all the future slides again. That might be a little duplicate. Probably did. I think I took them out, but we'll find out. Gold. But that's the MnGAGE we use. These are made in Fergus Falls. So a Minnesota-based company. Why are they in Fergus Falls? It's because when we started this network back in the early 70s, we needed a cheap plastic gauge that was really accurate. And Productive Alternatives in Fergus Falls, we still have the blueprints for the gauge. They came up with this gauge, and we've used it ever since. It's exactly the same gauge that CoCoRaHS uses. So if you're a CoCoRaHS reader, you use this 4-inch plastic gauge. It's still the best gauge as money can go for what you need it for. And here's our website again. See that again. History of MnGAGE. So they did a great job attracting media attention back in the 70s. It's too bad that Dennis Falcon isn't on, because here he is right there. And so there's Dennis Falcon holding his best guess for precinct. Now, remember the state fair, the old FFA building, the white building? It's now gone, but it's right by where the Carolyn, yes, Frank.
I won that 1 year.
You won that 1 year? This one?
Yeah, and I got a free gauge too.
But yes, look, I got a free gauge 1 year because I put in a trace as my guess.
I went really low too.
Yeah. You always guess low. That's your key to win. If you ever want to win a free gauge, guess low, because everybody puts in 5.87 inches. Well, it's not going to rain that much at the fair, usually, except 1977. But, so, what they had is this huge bubble machine, soap machine thing, bubble machine on the roof of the FFA building, and you could see everybody's playing in the foam and the bubbles there. And then at the top there's the old state climatologist. On the right, or is it your left? No, it's the right, is Earl Keenest, and then it has Don Baker, professor at the U of M, with that giant rain gauge from the Future Farmers of America. And I looked for that rain gauge. I wanted that rain gauge. And apparently they threw it out. It's too bad. What a great prop to have, this giant rain gauge. Oh well. So, here's why you need such a good network. This is the National Weather Service rain gauge monitors, and I hate to say it, there's less dots now than when I made this map. We've lost some co-op observers, especially around the Alexandria area. We used to have some really good one good one in Dalton. I started staring at these dots, I started thinking of all the stations, all the people that were there. Farmers were always one of the best observers because they already were watching the weather. So I would say the best rain gauge readers is if you have any gauge of any kind that you're doing now. How many people have any kind of gauge? See, almost everybody does, right? Well, in this room, of course. But if you have any gauge at all, you'll love the upgrade to the CoCoRaHS gauge or the MnGAGE gauge. So anyway, how can we improve on these dots? It's not a great map, you probably can't really see that. But every star represents an observer. That's an older one. I think I got a more modern one here. There we go. Here's June 2023. We have 1,600 readers in the state. And this does include CoCoRaHS. It includes MnGAGE and CoCoRaHS. And CoCoRaHS, there is a lot in the metro, which is great. For many years, we had a hard time getting people in the metro to be readers because a lot of people think you don't need it, right? But it's funny how important the weather is in the metro. It varies from place to place a lot, especially when there's severe weather. We like as many spotters as you can. And I take this map with me when I get at conventions and stuff, and people find their house on the map. So we are having some problems in the state. You can see up in Coochin County, it's a little thin. Rock County is also very thin. It's odd. Where we don't have a lot of readers is where we get request data a lot. It's like, what do you have for Rock County? Not much, you know? Nobles County too, not a lot. But it's funny, there's demand there for the data. There just isn't a lot of people. Farms are also not as small as they used to. They keep getting bigger, and there's less people to record the weather. So anyway, still not bad. We got pretty good coverage across the state. So this is an interesting graph. So what we tried to do once was graph how many readers did we have? And the FFA went nuts with this thing in the 70s. They had every kid with a gauge in their backyard. We had 2,100 rain gauges in the state. That's a huge number. That's about double the CoCoRaHS number in the state and MnGAGE put together. We have 1,600 now. We had 2,100. But look what happened. As soon as those kids went off, graduated high school, look what happened to the numbers. Now, one thing that's interesting about it, we lost half the observers, but look at over time. Once we lost that initial number, it didn't change much. So really, even though we lost half our observers, we kept the other half for the next 30 years. So once you started doing it every day, it's almost like having coffee or breakfast in the morning. You just got to look at that rain gauge, and that really helped. Oh, Frank.
Let's go up and down like that.
Because the more people do it in the summer and the winter. Yep, we don't try to make them do it in the winter. Winter is hard. It's most fun, I think, melting snow and seeing how much water's in the snow, but you also have to go outside and do it. And you gotta be careful, don't leave your funnel out, don't leave your inner cylinder out, you'll crack them. So there's some problems there, but that's why it goes up and down every year. They do come back every year, which is nice.
The winter's more fun now.
I think winter's more fun. It says you can do a lot more.
That should be the slogan. The
Winter's more fun. I think I'll use that. Winter's more fun.
I'll give it to you.
Yes. I think. I'll give you credit.
What's the proper protocol when you exceed the cylinder in a time of rain?
Oh,
Carefully pour it
To
down.
dump it and start over. You gotta go out in the rain.
yeah, they hold 11 inches. So there's cases where, especially in southeast part of the country, where you overflow it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm a big fan of the co-op network. Their gauge is an 8-inch gauge, holds 22 inches. There's the 24. Does anybody know for sure? 22 or 24, you're a lot less likely to top that gauge. But 11-inch gauge, you might have to go out before the 24 hours and dump it. Kenny put like a tinfoil hat on his to make it taller or something like that. He had the jackpot from the 1987 storm. So yeah, he always rubs that in on me that he got this witness 87 storm and I missed it. So, you know, he had the overflow gauge, you know, I never had that much. I had about 6 inches. So anyway, all these agencies cooperate with us. So we have, you know, a National Weather Service, always a good partner. Their Cooperative Observer Program. Anybody here ever been a co-op? Not many. Only about 175 in the state. Sometimes they used to come here. I remember back in the day. Soil and water conservation districts in each county in the state. That helps us out a lot. DNR forestry, because they're always worried about fire, of course. They have a vested interest. And we have a special backyard monitoring program. You know, just people that don't fit in at any other network, but they can still join the backyarders. And then environmental services and watershed districts are always keen to be monitoring the weather. So what's the success of it? I don't think she's too thrilled about watching the weather. So you gotta be interested in doing it. The worst thing people go to me is, I have a brother, I'm gonna make him do it. No, bad observer, won't do it. Anytime you say I'm gonna make somebody do something like watch the weather, unless they're doing it already, they're not gonna do it. I don't know how many cases I've run into where that is like, no, they won't take the gauge out of the box. So you want interested individuals and agencies, and of course standardized forms help, and CoCoRaHS has the online form. Everybody uses the same rate gauges, no tipping buckets. I find out who's using a tipping bucket pretty good. They stand out. Tipping bucket, hands down, 10% less in a year. Easy. Yep, it adds up. I've not seen one, even the best tipping bucket ever, which is the AWPEG at the National Weather Service, at the airport, still has problems. And we don't know exactly what all the problems are. They're weird.
I get a weighing gauge.
A weighing gauge, universal weighing rain gauge? Now you're talking. That's the only one. But you have to go out there and change the chart and, you know, put antifreeze in. But the universal weighing rain gauge is the only one that I would say could beat a 4-inch rain gauge and an 8-inch rain gauge. Yeah, that's good. How many people know what a universal weighing rain gauge is? Looks like a rocket, a metal thing like this, and yeah, they don't have, nobody uses those anymore. But I love them. It was nice. All right, so I do contact the observers every year with a feedback letter. Start doing that in March, and then you do annual control. Make sure they're doing things right. We have a huge problem. This past year was the worst observing day I've ever seen in the history of our network. What happened on October 31st this year? What happened? Last year. It snowed, right? Okay, so it snowed. We got whatever it was, 0.7 inches snow, a little bit of rain, but it was a lot of precip because we've been so dry, 1/4 inch, right? What day should you have put that precip on? CoCoRaHS people? What? November 1. I had dozens and dozens of people put it on October 31st. Throws off everything. I had Prism. You know what Prism is? The people out in, where are they? Utah? They do nationwide mapping. They're sucking in data all the time. They go, Pete, your observers are doing it wrong. Like, what do you mean? Oh, they're date shifting. It's been a problem with observing weather for 100 years. So their thought is great. Oh, it snowed today. It should have put on today's date. No, most people get up in the morning, it's a 24-hour total ending the next day probably. So 7 a.m. on the 1st includes what happened in the afternoon of the 31st. So I gotta very gently tell my readers, don't do that. Because it throws off the month, throws off the day, and doesn't make Prism very happy either, so. Yes,
Does CoCoRaHS make you do a 7 a.m. op?
you don't have to do 7, but they like that the most. 7, between 7 and 9.
You can do a midnight one?
Few people do midnight. Weather service is like, they'd rather have the morning, because for all their products, they use the morning op. So, there's a few readers, we have a few readers. Dave Worstead, if anybody knows who he is, he's a midnight observer. Steve Reckers at New Hope is 11 p.m. observer. We have some odd dates up there. Are you a midnight observer?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can't do it.
I know when I do my work on cases and stuff.
Ah.
I can tell too when they put it on the wrong day too.
Yes.
Yeah. It just pops right out.
No, you can't do it. So there's a much more happier observer, right? Yeah. Successful network, interested individuals and agencies. And use the 4-inch plastic gauge. I know people call me and say, I got this really good tipping bucket. It ain't gonna work in the winter. So, oh yes, so this is my favorite. You go to Menards and look what they got. And how much are those? $1.97. Ooh, nice. No, don't use those. And then there's a standard tipping bucket. Now they do have one neat thing on it. What are these things? These little spikes for?
Keep birds on it.
Birds, yes. Birds are a problem. Yes, they are. So the bird spikes are good. It's not a bad gauge. You just can't do it in the winter. You can hook up a heater to it, right? But then what happens there is you evaporate a lot of the snow, especially in January. So it's better to have the manual gauge. No. Question?
Sorry to ask a question. Hey,
That's
what do you do when you have the snow starting to build up on the rim of the gauge?
Of your 4-inch gauge?
Yeah.
You can use the official CoCoRaHS snow swatter. You can buy one if you want, or you just push your hand down on it. So that's a problem with the 4-inch gauge. They'll start filling up with snow.
Do you
Just
put
push
it
it
in
straight
or
down.
do you push it out?
You push it straight down. Don't push it in. You do it straight down, so half of it falls off and half of it goes in.
Yeah, it's really what I do too, but I
Yeah.
wasn't sure what the official.
You can push it down in the gauge too, because it'll collect on the side and overflow. I don't know if I got a picture of that, but that's a problem. Snow is snow accumulate. You could do a cookie cutter, or you can leave it on the ground on a snowboard, upside down. Then you can melt that.
I've done that too, yeah.
You can do that too. So lots of ways to do it. So we have data entry. We actually have a online form, believe it or not. Before CoCoRaHS was cool, we were doing it online. Having a hard time getting people to want to do it. This is a better form than CoCoRaHS though. And even the Weather Service has a weather coder. Because the guy who wrote this code had to do data entry. If you want a good code writer, make him do the data entry. They'll figure it out real quick, the shortcuts. This guy did great. Automatically advances when you put a decimal in or 0.41, it goes down to the next line. 0 is a plus key. I mean, it's beautiful. It's old and it's on its way out, but it's still a work of art. You could type so fast to do this as you used to be able to beat the computer in speed. You know, you'd have to hold up because you could type faster than that. But you still can use it. This is me of this April. So if you're one of our MnGAGers, you could use our data entry. I'd love if CoCoRaHS would use this. What bothers me the most at CoCoRaHS, you have to do it one day at a time. So if you want to do, oh wait, I made a mistake, it's not easy to fix. You got to go back in time, one day at a time, or just fill in the whole month of zeros, which some people do. That's no good either. So this is good where you can do the whole month if you wanted to. So, let's see. So, unfortunately or fortunately, most of our observers still mail in paper forms. Their average age is about 80. So, CoCoRaHS is not much younger. They're about 10 years younger. So, but they've done a better job doing the online thing, and we got to do a better job of the online thing. I know I can't have paper forms forever, as much as they're fun. But they are stored in the what? In the cloud. See, when they ask me, where are your paper forms stored? They get stored in the cloud. Another question? Frank, you're going to run out of questions.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
I know the answer, but can you tell people why you have an X?
Yes.
Instead of a 0?
Yeah,
Why-
so,
and why you put zeros?
yes, in our world, we want full months of data if we can have it, because we do, create gridded files and use the data for, statewide products. So if you didn't put your gauge out, try to have it blank. CoCoRaHS too. So you don't wanna guess it or something like that. You wanna have, real numbers, and then that's why the total would be missing in this case, because they missed some events put out in the season on the 5th of April or something like that. So I tried to cover as many weird things as I could in this kind of dummy form. The one thing I should have done is put in zeros for snowfall. They should have zeros when it wasn't snowing. Like CoCoRaHS likes that too. They want 0 if it didn't snow for the month. So like April, it could snow. So putting in those zeros. What did CoCoRaHS say? Be a hero. Report your 0, right? Something like that. So yeah, zeros are data too. Does that answer it?
Yeah. This way, it tells that person reading that you observed.
Yeah, you observed.
0 and you didn't
Yes.
say.
0 you observed, if it's blank you did. So quality control, our data online, anybody can pull all the data back to 1972 if they really wanted to. This is kind of an older way to do it. The Chisago County, they got a really good network up there. Like to see the numbers for the full 12 months of the year. They don't have to do the full year, but it's nice when they do it. And you can see how many difference, all those SWCD readers, and there's 2 Weather Service co-op, one at Forest Lake, and one in Wild River. So most counties might have 1 or 2 co-op, but they might have a dozen other readers, which is really nice. Makes a big difference. Send them question.
What's the difference between co-op observer and CoCoRaHS?
Co-op observer is with the National Weather Service. CoCoRaHS is with CoCoRaHS, I guess. They're out of Denver, out of Colorado. So the co-op is an older network. They had a metal 8-inch gauge, and they actually have a temperature gauge too, a very old, outdated MMTS gauge. We have one at the U of M. It still works, but it's wired. They tried wireless ones, it didn't work very well, so they still use the wired MMTS gauge as a little beehive thing. And so that's been like the backbone of the whole country for weather records. So if you hear of all the snow that happened in Florida, right? They said they broke the record. I could not find, what did they use for the records? Because they're not used to showing snowfall in their forms, right? So I have no idea, did they just pick a CoCoRaHS and get a record? Or what? I don't know. If anybody finds out, let me know, because I could not find, did they really break records, snow? Or now that you have 100 observers, well, of course you're going to break more records now. So that's a problem. That's why I always stick with co-op for big records. Like our MnGAGE, if we set a record, it counts more if the co-op does it. That's a big debate with CoCoRaHS or co-op. Benefits and uses, stormwater runoff is a big one. In-depth climate investigation / flood legal purposes, as Frank would attest, is always, especially winter precip, slip and falls, right? That's still a thing?
Yeah.
Yep. So one thing I was pointing out is for snow removal, there's millions of dollars in contracts of snow removal in the Twin Cities alone, all relying on one number at the airport. And then we beg them to keep it going. Got to keep going. That's official snowfall at the airport, because otherwise it's well, where do you pick it? Do you trust the plower or the plowee to measure the snow? You'd rather have somebody that that has no skin in the game to measure the snow. So here's some of the people that used the data. Had some interesting calls from all these people over time. Construction companies, there's a delay in construction, right? There's rain too much. We get school kids call us and things like that all the time. Hobbyists, lots of hobbyists out there. So this is what I get to do. I just completed the 2024 maps for this. I just had enough data for December to do it. So there's a lot of detail. It's a big state and it varies a lot. So it's good to have a high density network to see all the nuance with precipitation. And then you could do special studies, like here's one, 1978, an old map, but we used our high density network to really tune in where the most precip, and Maplewood and Roseville have not been hit by a lot of big storms compared to like the South Metro. We just have not had big storms here. This is probably the biggest one we've had in the North Metro, where that's that 6-inch contour. And your dad would have had it, Frank, I'm sure. I don't know what he got, I should have looked. Here's I always like this article. So a man wades through 4 to 5 feet of water on Saturday at Interstate 694. Well, I don't know how tall that guy is, but yeah, still. So yep, 694 in Shoreview. So one of the big, just one of the run-of-the-mill events that we've looked at. Of course, people might remember this one, the superstorm. We did a reanalysis not too long ago, I guess a couple of years ago, using all the data we had in Hyden, and kind of had a nice pattern, the bullseye, where it was the worst. Can you imagine what would happen if this happened again today? In 1987, how built up was Eden Prairie? Nothing. There's not much there in 87. It would be a heck of a flood now.
And they'll blame it all on climate change. But I'm not a climate change denier.
Yeah, well, it's part of it, yeah. This is part of the climate change right here, very wet 2010s. So a whole decade, we had wet year after wet year after wet year, and it was like the grand finale was 2019. So that's my son riding his bike near Spoon Lake, and just I can't remember what year that is. I have it on there. I can't remember. One of the, not 2019, probably, because that's
2020, it says March.
Does it say March 2020?
Underneath the map.
Underneath the map? Oh, well, that's when the map was made.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so some places had 40 to 65 inches of extra moisture in 10 years. So lakes are high, people are complaining, high water and such. Not very good for crops, but notice how much it varies in the state. Not everybody was wet. If you go up in north central Minnesota, where the drought became worse quicker, they didn't have as wet of conditions. Here's County B, Rice Street, June 2014. I haven't seen it like that since then, and that was impassable for a while. That's right by the Cub Foods, fairly close to it there. That's I-35, the background there. So this is at June 2014. So having all this high density data, this is before CoCoRaHS really came into play too. So now we can do maps like this, we ingest CoCoRaHS data too. So then 2020s, all of a sudden here comes another weather regime, right? So 2020, the drought started, but we didn't really notice it because 2019 was so wet. We had so much water in the ground. But what happens is year over year of drought, different things start to happen. And this oak tree, it's right on Aŋpétu at the U of M there, has been slowly dying every year. And this was in 2022. It's still there, but the only thing left with leaves is now about like that much. So it's really sad to see these big old oaks die. And it's partly because it was so wet, and then it got to be so dry. So, so the drought continues on. I think I got a current drought. Yeah. So this is today. Yep. Today's drought map. And we're doing okay in the Twin Cities, but elsewhere in the state, the drought's still there. I'll tell you what, if we don't get snow, we're in trouble this spring. If it stays like this for the rest of the year, it'll be an interesting spring because we'll go right back into bad drought in a hurry. So we're hoping for a snowy February. Yes, everybody is, right? So one thing that happens over time, that gauge is about 15, 20 years old. That's what they look like. Get a little cloudy, get a little old. So what's the future of MnGAGE monitoring? So it's trying to keep the network active. People retire from watching the weather. It's kind of sad to see them go. And then when CoCoRaHS came to town, our one request was, can we merge the networks? You know what their answer was to us? You have too much data. I'm like, really? We have too much data? Well, how could that be a problem? Well, we have to store the data, and you know, one drive isn't cheap, you know. And it's like, well, how are we going to do this then if we don't merge? So we haven't merged yet because of that. And I'm hoping for someday we merge because we should, because we got both, and they're both great networks. Something else that's happening is we have Mesonet's expansion in the state. NDON is the North Dakota Agricultural Weather Network. NDON's coming to town. They're coming to Minnesota. And And it's a good thing for a lot of things. The only problem with them is I'm trying to stress, please do the manual measurements still. Don't rely on MnDNR for all your weather data. Keep the 8-inch can going. We're not gonna make, if it was up to me, I would not make an MnDNR gauge have the record. It's gotta be co-op. Standardized equipment, try to keep it the same. So, but MnDNR's coming, and the agricultural world really wants MnDNR because they do a lot of solar, they do soil moisture, they do soil temperature, everything you need to plug and chug into their models. So it's definitely a needed thing, and it'll be a good thing. I just don't want it to replace the manual network. So what will MnGAGE look like in the future? So I have a wish list. So definitely always keep up interaction with observers. It's great to talk to some CoCoRaHS readers, because I'm the, the CoCoRaHS liaison for the state, and with Michelle, she was here, she'd be talking about that too. Metadata is a big deal. When do you look at your gauge? Sometimes we find out that people say they look at their gauge at a certain time, but then they change their mind, but never change when they do it on their form. We found some of that sometimes, and people decide to do midnight for whatever reason. When it says it's 7 in the morning, who knows? Frank would never do that.
I don't.
No, see? Quality control efforts, always try to keep track of the data. Look out for those date shifters, the Halloween snowfall thing. And more real-time reporting, people want data right away. They don't want to wait for a paper form to come in. They want it online right away, which I agree. And integration of CoCoRaHS, someday I hope we can still do that. So, yeah, here's, Frank had that question, what do you do? Here's your CoCoRaHS gauge. Let's see. That's weird. Oh, I had the test gauge, the other gauge from CoCoRaHS. What was that called? The bigger, taller one. It's like $175. They had a new gauge, what was it called? Oh, I had it. Anyway, I tested both of them, and they had the same problem with the snow. You just push down in the snow. And there you can do a cookie cutter of snow too. If you want to measure the snow. It's good for snow water equivalent. Like how much water is in the snowpacks. So. Okay. I only have 3 more talks. So.
Is there anything out there, Pete, knowing the bias with the tipping bucket rain gauge?
Yes.
But also the need for automation to get some of these really wide networks, especially in disparate areas. Is there anything out there as far as a automatable but doesn't show that bias that the tipping bucket does?
The best gauge you can get is an Aŋpétu. Aŋpétu is what the Weather Service uses at the airport. Tens of thousands of dollars though. And what that is kind of like brought the universal wing rain gauge with antifreeze in it. So you need to have, in order to do wintertime precip, you gotta melt it somehow. And I'm not exactly, they use a scale of some kind. Never seen one up close. I don't know exactly what it is, but obviously nobody's gonna be able to have something that big, right? So you can hedge your bets with a tipping bucket. So if you have it closer to the ground, if you have a bigger opening like 8-inch, a lot of the standards are 4-inch, you have your bird spikes. And the hardest part, go inspect it. Because then you can clean out the dead stuff that falls in there. So if you can do all that, you'd have pretty good data. But you gotta still visit. Too many people think, I'll just plunk that in the woods and I'll see you in the fall. Then you find out it's plugged up and you got no data. So that's the problem. You still need a human person to go inspect these things in order to have good data. If you want good data, I always say your cost of the gauge to maintain is 10 times the cost. But that they love the budget gauges, like, okay, you can have many gauges you want, but then the upkeep is 10 times. And then they know that. Any other questions?
I guess another one.
Oh, another.
So you talked about the kind of the age, what CoCoRaHS is 70 and MnGAGE is 80.
Yep.
Has it been stable at that? Is like you have, people, let's just say people exiting as you have people entering that?
Retiring, I call it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Has that been stable or
Fairly
was there like
stable.
a rush and now everyone's getting aging out?
When people retire from their jobs, they're looking for things to do.
Yeah.
And that's usually when we pick up people. So like the 60-year-olds.
Yep.
And that happens a lot.
Okay.
One thing we ask them is say, don't take your gauge to Florida with you and then say you're from Minnesota. That happens. Yes. like, wow, 17 inches of rain in November, or, what's going on? Oh, you're in Florida, that happens, so. But yeah, but recruitment is ongoing. Everybody says, why don't you get school kids to do it? And you saw what happened with the FFA experiment. You will get a lot of kids, but you're gonna have to lose a lot too. But maybe you'll keep some for years and years. If you can keep them for years and years, but people also move around a lot more than they used to. That's another problem we're having. They move around. People don't sit put for 50 years anymore. They move on. So they can take their gauge and do it somewhere else, but you find that great observer, it used to be a great observer in Farmington, right? So we tried, actually, your dad went down to Rosemont to try to find a replacement. We got a good one, but then they moved 5 years, got another one. It's like, it was hard to keep up. People kept moving. So, yeah. But everybody here is doing a good job being CoCoRaHS, right? So, yep.
Well, this half of the room, right?
This half of the room, I don't know what you guys.
I'm glad you brought up the Mesonet thing.
Yes.
And, I was just looking at their site. Like you said, it seems focused on agricultural,
Yes.
and I think that's important. But, like James and I have been talking about, is a Minnesota Mesonet ever a thing? I know we've got like Hennepin
Yes.
West.
Hennepin
Is the
is
need there, or
one.
is it a funding issue, or we let NDOGs kind of stand?
Yeah, it's, we got Hennepin West. Does anybody know that? That's pretty good. That's a A class network. You'll know a Hennepin West when you see it because they got a 10-meter tower. We have a DNR Mesonet, but it's not as big. It's more at DNR sites. So there's other Mesonets going on, and trying to get them all under one umbrella is the key. Meso West does a good job trying to have all the data in one place. Of course, Iowa State, right? They suck up everything. I think Iowa State, pretty much it. I love you guys, the Weather Service for data, they send you to Iowa State. That's always. I'm like, wait a minute.
Wisconsin's had a couple of years now.
Yeah, Wisconsin, and a lot of states, Kentucky has a really good one. Oklahoma's got a good one.
That's a great app to check.
Yes, so
I
they
know the guy that runs the Wisconsin one. I know they're building whatever they can.
yeah.
Gotta have money though, right?
Then the biggest problem is like NDON's, they usually have sponsors for their sites. So the site will be the sponsor. And if you don't want to be a sponsor, they might pull it. So that's always been how they've run it. So there's a little issue there with who owns the data, right? So we want the data to be free and everybody can use it, right? So that's why Meso West and things like that, you can still use it. But yeah, it'd be nice to have a perfect network, statewide network, We have actually FFA airports are really good here too. Compared to other states, we do have automated stations, a lot of them. So a lot of our wind records come from places like that, yeah. You had enough of me yet? All right.
I've been a CoCoRaHS observer for years.
Yeah.
Should I join MnGAGE too, or don't you want?
No, good question. No, you don't have to join MnGAGE too. CoCoRaHS, we got your data.
Okay.
You do, I always tell, do whatever you want. CoCoRaHS and MnGAGE doesn't matter. Just do whatever works best for you. CoCoRaHS guys, they're doing more with apps and things that we can do because they got the whole country. So, and of course, getting Nolan Duskin's emails. So with what's going on in his farm and how his horses. I'm always worried about his horses. I don't know why, but I always feel like when he starts out with anybody know what I'm talking about? Nolan Duskin's notes. I love it. It's great. Yes, he really writes a good one. He's great. So yeah, stick with CoCoRaHS is what I say. They're doing a good job. Wish we could do more. I think Michelle would love to meet readers, so maybe we'll do more of that kind of thing. So.
Another question.
Yeah.
MnDOT has all these weather stations
yes.
along the freeway.
Yes, Arwis. Yes.
Is that of use to you? What do they provide?
The problem with a lot of those is they're geared for one thing, and they work well. They want to know what that pavement's doing, not necessarily for climatology purposes. I mean, but they're neat. You see them on the side of the road, you get excited. Oh, look at the weather station, And so we don't do much with Arwis. Now, there's another network, ROS. I got that right, ROS. The fire folks have an automated network too, and out of all the tipping buckets I've seen, and I'm not sure what they're doing, they're the best. Because they are the most, they're all about fire. So they better have those buckets working good, because otherwise they're no good to them. So, yeah, if they're interested enough, they're gonna keep an eye on them. So yeah, I wish we had better. It's amazing how many weather stations there are in the state though. And then you got privates, who's got a private station? It's not WeatherBug, what is it now? Where you share your data. What's it called? Weather Underground, but there's another name, there's another one.
Oh, yeah.
Which one is it now? I just saw it the other day, I was like, oh, I never even heard of that one, but I have a friend that has his station's tied into it, and it's Aŋpétu. Is that what it is? Yeah.
That's what I have.
Yeah, so that's cool too, why not? Have it all tied in. Any PCA questions? No PCA. You guys still got your CoCoRaHS gauge at the office?
It broke during COVID, it froze because we were locked out.
Oh, I know you could get another one.
There.
No. What we gotta do is get a CoCoRaHS gauge at we had one at the Twins Stadium, which is fun. I know CoCoRaHS folks like that. Any other famous places to put them? I don't know. Maybe we gotta do that. All right. I think